G'day and welcome to Inforunners. I'm XQ. Today I'm joined by Badges and Essay, and we're going to do another one of those What Would It Take? How are you guys doing today, by the way?
Oh, well, thank you, mate.
Yep.
So we did the last one of these and they were pretty well received. I think some people had some fun in the comments below. I definitely had a lot of fun reading the different variants and the little back and forth between people. So it was really interesting. And we even have the same here with us when we do it. So I know, and I enjoy reading the comments for the same reasons. So yeah, just a little bit about CitizenCon. We're recording this just before CitizenCon, so a couple of days before, and you guys will see this just after CitizenCon. We're actually going to take the day of CitizenCon off so we can watch it just like you guys, and so there'll be no show on the Sunday. So you probably, actually, now I think about it, you've already missed it. So what does it matter? But also, I would like you to check out Paul's doing a 24-hour live stream for charity, so the Astropub. I'll be on there as many other content creators will be, and that's another reason why I'm taking the day off, because I'm at a weird time for it, but that's fine. So if you want to support our community, I would highly recommend you drop by Paul's stream and just say hello and stuff like that. Even just knowing people are there watching helps. So they're trying to raise money for I believe it's Doctors Without Borders, so that's a good global charity that we can all get behind. All right, so with that said, I think we'll kick it straight over. Do we want to talk a little bit about you guys should do that, don't you? So what is this episode, and what were we trying to do with the fleets that we've built here? So I'll let you guys talk about that.
Okay, I'll take that one. So similar to the Kraken episode, we were sitting around having a conversation, and I just threw a whole bunch of tanks into Fleet View and started building out what it would look like to do a formation, what it would take to actually support those tanks. And then I got into the support element, and then I got into transportation or landing. And after a while, I was like, this is far, far more players than I would have expected that would be required to do this. So I threw a couple images into one of the chats, and Badgers and a couple other folks replied and basically were like, yeah, this is the way I would do it. And they got that conversation going. So for this one, and it's pretty interesting. This one came about from the Tonkers, and I really so I got to give a shout out to Murky. It's Murky, Shockwave, and there's one more.
Vegafell.
Kirby.
Vegafell too, and Kirby. Sorry, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Vegafell's there as well.
Yeah, because they gave some great input and really got a conversation going about it. But we all quickly realized that we're going to have to play with a lot more friends than we expect to if we're going to do certain things. It's going to take a lot more.
The other thing I should probably lead with as well is this actually is the thing that started the episode, right? And then we kind of went back and went, this is a little bit too complicated. Let's do the Kraken one first. So this is the whole thing that kicked off the whole discussion. Like once I got brought in and all that, and I was like, this would be a really good idea for a show. And then we kind of thought this might be too complicated. But with the A2 coming out and us talking about the A2 this week and a couple of episodes on the A2, I thought let's bring it back and we'll go back to originally where it started. And bring that at the forefront. And so this whole episode is essentially what it would take to, with support, bring 4 tanks, a tank platoon to the ground of 4 tanks. That's the simplified version, yeah?
Yeah, with the ability to be able to do multiple assaults. So to continue operations and support.
Yep. Right. Now, Badgers and me are probably a little bit on the back foot here, aren't we? I'm definitely on the back foot because I'm a freaking military moron. But is this your area? This is not really your area of expertise, is it, Badgers? Because you're more into ships, where SA's got the advantage because he's the ground guy.
So my expertise when it comes to things like this is amphibious operations. So Bulwark, a landing platform dock, was all about being able to take amphibious units, including armor, to a given point to discharge them ashore. Once we got to that stage, it was their fight, and because of its value, effectively, Bulwark would then disappear again, get out of range, and then other ships would be called in to support with gunfire. You'd obviously have aircraft support as well. So I'm aware a little bit, but the specifics of supporting armor is a little bit out of my depth. So again, real big thanks to the tanker guys, strange though they are, for giving us all the info on that.
They are indeed. They're a lovely bunch of misfits. I love them.
Yeah.
I would say if I ever win one of these, though, you guys have definitely had a Seaman moment. I expect to lose every single one of these. And one of the conditions that we've looked at, especially in the last episode when we've been judging this, is the number of people. But I also think we kind of look at each other's fleets and say what works and what doesn't work. I think that's the other thing. So it's kind of more of a mutual respect who wins and loses. I don't think there's any right or wrongs needless to say. I think it's, and I did say this in the Crackers in episode 2, it's just our opinion and our thoughts, and there is no right and wrong. So if you totally disagree with ours, that's totally awesome, because one of the things that we get from each other is we get different ideas. So as I'm putting things into Fleet Viewer when I was building this episode, I was just like, what the, and what, why would you do that? Like the whole time. And that's because it's different. Someone thinks differently. So if you're, this is not an episode to get your guard up on, is what I'm trying to say. So have a bit of fun with it. We're having a bit of fun with it. And that's what this is, a bit of fun.
Yeah. So I think, like we were talking beforehand, and one of the things I wanted to be really clear on is people will see the numbers and go, wait, with a full server, we couldn't do what you're talking about at the moment. And it's just about what we're trying to do is we're trying to mesh some of that realism, some of that experience that people don't have, gamify it a little bit, and then show it in the game. We know that, you know, for someone to land 4 tanks, it's going to be 4 tank crews. They'll also fly the M2s. They'll land them. The tanks will drive off, and that's it. And that's a perfectly viable way to play in game. This is just a little bit more kind of immersion, kind of military gameplay stuff.
I also think this is definitely more tailored when the game's released. It's definitely not now.
Absolutely.
So yeah. All right, I'm going to flick it over to the browser view, and I've got it on the wrong person's. Well, actually, we'll just do yours first. That way, it's not spoiling anything. So this is actually Drinker's first. He had a total crew complement of 66. And so I think that's pretty good. Do you want to explain your reasoning and go through it all for us, SA?
Yeah, so for this one, conventional wisdom, if you go military wisdom, if you go all the way back to Napoleonic times, to attack and win, you needed a 3-to-1 person advantage. So if you're taking on 20 people, you need 60 people to win. Of course, with this, there are specific weak points. There are points at which you are very vulnerable. Making planet fall, getting the tanks out of their aircraft, out of the aircraft. At those points specifically, before you've got your AA bubble set up, you are incredibly vulnerable to a counter assault or a pre-assault. So looking at that, that's why you've got the Polaris on the left. This is effectively going to remain in orbit. It's the escort craft for bringing the fleet in. And what it'll also do is once the M2s have finished their job, they'll take off, head back up, and sit with the Polaris for protection, and potentially just go in quantum away from the planet a little bit to give themselves some space.
Going to be honest a little bit there.
Sure.
I don't think we actually highlighted that in the rules. We actually just said for what comes down, but that is a thing that's not in my fleet. There's nothing to protect them from above. That is. Is there anything like that for yours, SA, or have I totally just missed that? Yeah. Okay, I'm an idiot and I lose points. Right? Yeah, that's fine. I get it now.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that makes sense. It does make sense to me.
Yeah. So it's all about the delivery, and the Herald will surprise a lot of people. The Herald, obviously, in this image is within the Polaris. And as we're kind of starting to see in Star Citizen, the thing with any sort of electronic signal is that to send any sort of radio traffic to transmit to a satellite, you're sending out a signal. Now, someone listening, it's like being in the dark, right? And using some sort of like bats in the dark. They send that noise out, which can be picked up by the right listening equipment or the right animal. That's what the Herald is. The Herald's there to pick up transmissions.
Herald's an animal?
To sit there and listen and... Sorry?
The Herald's an animal? Sorry.
Well, I mean, you know, for this analogy. Yeah. So the Herald's there basically to pick up transmissions. Because obviously a spike in radio traffic or a spike in sort of activity would indicate or seem to indicate that you've been detected.
Yeah.
And vice versa. You not get that. You're fairly confident that you're arriving undetected. Obviously, the 2 M2s deliver the tonks to the planet and then get out again. The A2 delivers a ballista, and the purpose of the ballista is to provide an AA bubble, not so much on the Tonks themselves, but what you would call the forward operating base, which is effectively where they marshal. So they'll come down, land, all the tanks will come out before they go off to do what they need to do. They'll marshal in a specific area, and that's the ballista's task. Same with the Vulcan. The Vulcan will actually act as a forward repair point and a rearm point. The Redeemer's in there for kind of combat search and rescue. So CSAR, getting people out of a tight spot where they're still under fire, and also to almost act in that sort of Apache role. Because the problem you've got your tanks is you've got limited awareness of what's going on around you. And the chances are in the tank, if you detect something, it's also detected you. So being able to use the Redeemer to do a little bit of distance targeting and stuff is quite powerful and quite potent. The Terrapin is almost your early warning AWACS. So again, well out of combat, well out of the way, sat there basically passive scanning to pick up things that are coming towards the fob, but far enough away that it's not attracting attention. And the Carrack, well, that is the fob. You've got everything you could possibly want in there. You've got powerful scanners. You've got a med bay, which is, you've got your respawn point for the time being. And you've also got some vehicles in there. So I put in a Cyclone MT, I think. I'd probably switch that out for an RN, but it's too late now. But that's a little bit of AA power. And it's got the Pisces, which is going to be quite effective. If you have a tank that's destroyed, you can get the crew out once they've got themselves to safety. Drag casualties in, whatever, and then bring them back to the Carrack itself. And then there's a couple of interesting little vehicles thrown into the front there. I've got 2 Dragonflies, which is probably, along with the Herald, the most controversial thing. All detection is now based on the size and the output of whatever it is you're driving. So if you're trying to get some reconnaissance, the smaller vehicle that you're in, the closer that you can get undetected. So, depending on where the signatures end up, you could swap them out for Noxes or even the old Ranger bikes, whatever it is you wanted. But effectively, the idea there is to get a couple of forward observers as close to the enemy position as they can, undetected, so they can get eyes on and provide those tanks with a measure of forward observers. This is where stuff is. And that's when, potentially they can vector on the A2 as well as be useful for the Tonks themselves.
That's what I was about to say myself. That'd also be good for the forward observing of the A2. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly that.
So the reason I actually wanted to show this last is because I think yours is so much more, and I don't want to say unconventional, but it's very different from mine and Essay's in a few different ways. But I really like it. Essay, what's your kind of feedback, thoughts? Type thing, because you're more in the know than I am.
For sustained operations, I mean, it's good. The idea of having a command and control on the ground, the support pieces of the Carrack are what I think is probably most impressive.
Yeah,
and
agreed.
The general use of the Pisces. My only concern with the Carrack would be defense, the ability to be able to guard it from airstrikes. Very similar to the video we just saw of like the A2 dropping a bomb on a Carrack. I mean, hopefully that won't be a thing, but that'd be my only concern.
I probably think you could have added a ballista to it to reduce the chances of that. So I actually think you could probably fit a ballista in there as well as those vehicles. But yeah, sorry, SA, to interrupt.
No, and I mean it's concise. The idea of having the Polaris as your orbital support was very interesting to me.
Yeah.
Only because I would have never considered that ship for that purpose, and it does have a bay. It can potentially do medevac. We know it's going to have med capabilities.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
Yeah,
the Herald is definitely something I never would have considered,
and I didn't think of it at all either. But yeah, I think I'm definitely losing points this turn around here, but we'll see. Yeah, I there's a few there that were unconventional for me. The Carrack, the Dragonflies make a lot of sense, actually, believe it or not. The Herald makes a lot of sense to me once it's explained. But again, just like SA, I just didn't think of some of these things because or maybe I'm just on the back foot, but I also just didn't think of them in that role. So yeah, well done, Badgers. All right, so we'll go on to mine, which is what I was going to do first because I was trying to do it from worse to kind of better and more incommensurate. But
Redeemer spam.
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. But my main reason for so many redeemers was I thought they were a bit more dual function. So not only do they support on the way in, but some of them or all of them can hang around and be on Overwatch. They're also good for extraction of troops. So if tanks go down, or the cyclones go down, or the ballistas, they can stop and pick people up and stuff like that. Again, the Terrapin for AWACS. I took a Valkyrie instead of taking a Hercules, because not only does it have a bit of cover fire, it also allows the troops to be carried in there for the cyclone, for the ships, which is a lot harder to do in a Hercules. So they're all in seats and they're protected, and they could essentially not have to be in the vehicle, so to speak, if they wanted to be. Also, you could also have some foot troops in there as well, so you get a bit of variety, not just vehicles, but guys on foot as well. And again, as I said, they can be picked up by the Redeemers. Ballistas for AA and stuff like that, and the tanks themselves. And the Vulcan to repair any vehicles that are in trouble. So I'm kind of envisioning that sitting behind like a sand dune or something and sending in the drones to repair said vehicles. I think that kind of covers it. So yeah, have at me, because I'm pretty sure you've got a lot to crap on. Go for it.
So the ballistas, is your plan to, when the tonks go out on maneuver, that one of the ballistas goes with those tonks?
I was probably going to send both of them with them, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Or maybe one with the cyclones and one with the tanks. I was kind of limited by the number of ships. I didn't want to have another Hercules to have more ballistas. And the other thing, like SA, if I did change anything now, is I have 2 TR cyclones, and I'd rather have MTs. I just totally
Yeah.
put the wrong cyclones in. But I do have 2 RNs, so I do have those for scanning and stuff like that. So basically, the 2 RNs and the Terrapin are your kind of little AWACS system and scanning. So yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
go ahead.
For it. No, you go ahead. I'm done.
So the Redeemers, I mean, bring a huge amount of Overwatch and firepower to be called in. So yeah, I definitely this is not lacking in its ability to be able to provide good cover and good defensive capabilities for those ground troops. And also because of that, you can, when the Vulcan's parked, you can have 2 of those Redeemers parked as well, because you have other Redeemers potentially in play in the airspace. So Terrapin and Valkyrie, I didn't even think of the Valkyrie, to be honest. That's interesting, because like I approached the same problem in a very different way. So that's interesting.
Yeah. The Valkyrie is so easy to overlook, but it's got so much space. It's got, for the smaller vehicles, there's so much you can do with it. And like you said, one of the things that we're overlooking at the moment, because it's being implemented and not in yet, is drop seats. Is the object, the force reaction stuff, because that's really going to hurt if in future iterations. I really like it. I think one of the things that I was conscious in mine, and I think it would need to be something you were conscious with a fleet like this as well, is how much space missiles take up. And it was why I was almost tempting towards a more ballistic or energy-based kind of ground defense of the force. Is just how many missiles. If both ballistas have to get rid of all their missiles in defense of the force, is actually how much space and where those missiles are coming from. But yeah, no, I really like it, and the Valkyrie is a really neat addition. And just so many redeemers.
What's wrong with the Redeemers? I don't know, but the other thing is, like, I actually do think you could cut back on some of the crews on the Redeemer to bring down the number of crews required. So yeah. All right, we'll go on to essays, and then we'll come back and look at everyone's numbers of fleets. So essay really brought some power to bear here. When I saw the 2 hammerheads, I was like, holy shit, right? Like, he's just totally brought... If my fleet and his fleet met in a park, my fleet is dead, was my first thought.
Well, I looked at the problem. So I definitely have a different approach. I was trying to go minimalist, but minimalist with a force that could defend itself and protect itself. And I threw around a couple ships. But I settled on these because they covered the minimum gameplay. So if I was going all the way, I would have thrown probably a Carrack in there for command and control, a Starfarer for refueling. Even though you have the Vulcan, you're not going to take a Starfarer forward. You're going to use the Vulcan to go forward and fuel tanks and come back. So, but I took those out because I looked at it and said, this is just basically getting a beachhead, right? What would it do to get down that tank platoon to go in and either assault an outpost or set up a real LZ? So first thing I looked at is the ingress, the ability for the to get the tonks through space. So I selected 2 hammerheads as well as 5 total fighters with a tracker probably flying in the middle of formation with the eyes in the sky basically looking for that for any outliers, torpedo bombers, whatever it would be. And the 2 hammerheads would basically stay close to those vessels and giving the fighters and their wingman, the 2 sets of them, because I break them up into 2 and 2, the ability to peel off and chase down smaller, lighter fighters. The Redeemer and the Redeemers and the SRV and the Vulcan would actually the Redeemers would be focusing on those ships and defending those ships. They're almost like a separate within the the convoy or the flotilla, whatever. But until they got onto ground, those they're very vulnerable. You have to make sure that you're watching out for those because without your ability for sustainment and support, the tanks are useless. So then once they got down to ground, there are 2 options. So if there are more tanks that need to be delivered, the hammerheads would escort the transports back because that's really their defensive pieces without the tracker and the anvil. My God, the main ship for
Ballista?
anvil.
Oh,
Hornet. Oh my God.
sorry. Yep.
Yeah, sorry. Brain freeze, brain fart. They could potentially take those ships back for more tonks, or they would build a landing zone, basically fill out that landing zone. The column or the platoon for the tonks would consist of the four tonks, 1 ballista, the RN, and 2 of the MTs, and that should get. Oh, and also the 2 RSI freaking their little buggy thing. What's it
Rovers.
called again?
RSI
The
rover.
Rovers.
Yeah, the rovers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Urso rover. Yep. Sorry.
Yeah, Ursus. Those 2 are basically there because there is no APC. So they would potentially be taking either the Marine contingent that's on the hammerheads or in any of the jump seats, and they would basically be taking them forward because you need infantry with that group. You need the ability to put feet on ground to be able to clear buildings, whatever you need to do. Looking at the remaining 4 MTs and ballista, they would be assigned to that LZ to provide some security, as well as the Redeemers would be assigned to the at least 1, if not both, would be assigned to the Vulcan to be able to move back and forth with fighters staying in the air to be able to provide air cover. That, in my thought, that would give them the ability to establish what I guess would be a beachhead, a landing zone to begin operations, and the ability to move forward while maintaining security in the rear to resupply and to support, move forward and take an objective.
I'm going to say that SA knows way more about ground cam than either of us, Badges. I don't know about you, but that seals the deal for me. Yeah, you know your stuff, man. As long as I say, the Ursa rover, I think, is a brilliant idea. It is something that I didn't even think of. Would you agree with that, Badges?
Yeah, I think the Ursa is great. Again, because it just provides so much flexibility. You're moving troops, you're moving casualties, you're moving crews. In a pinch against infantry, you're providing, almost mechanized, certainly motorized support. So, yeah, I like the Rovers. I like the Rovers a lot.
Yeah, my thought process on PR Casevac would be personnel recovery, casualty evacuation would be using the Redeemers, very similar to I think what you both were thinking, that there would be the ability to either insert a small team or pull wounded out. If you had to do it by ground, you would use the Rovers, throw them in a rover. Rover, goes out with because it's theoretically going to have there's going to be a APC armored personnel carrier eventually that would have an escort of a couple of the MTs and the tanks could continue mission. It has flexibility. And as far as one of the things that I should say is that in my mind, it's implied that forward observers are moving in with any of this, especially if you're going to be looking at tonks and the ability to have eyes in the sky. So whether it's the Redeemer feeding information back, to that commander, or or if it's somebody up on a hilltop, there's that ability. That was my thought with the RN and
Mm,
the MT, was that those would be the same thing. I think that Badgers was going with those dragonflies, but it's very similar in a lot of ways. I think we're covering the same things, just in a very different way.
Mhm.
Mine
mm,
is far more costly when it comes to resources,
yeah.
Yeah.
because if you don't have a Starfarer coming in next and a Crucible coming in next, um, or potentially a Carrack for
Mm.
command and control, and you have ships up in orbit protecting you from bombardment, this is all for naught.
And I
And
think
the
the
only
I
sorry, go
was
ahead.
gonna so I was gonna say with the dragonflies too, because they're the RNs are like a ping vehicle, like scanning and stuff. I think they're a not just the size, but the fact that the RNs scan. I think that the dragonflies are a lot harder to detect
Yeah.
than the
Yeah.
RNs
Yeah.
myself.
And
Yeah. The upside, of course, of the dragonflies is they are harder to detect. The downside being it's visual, or it's detecting with someone in the
Mm,
pilot seat, like when you're flying around.
yeah,
But the RN, actually, the more I think about it, if you were to say to CIG now, the RN, what were you thinking? Give me a situation in which the RN absolutely excels. If it's not this, I have no idea
yeah.
what it is. Do you
I
know what
the
I
R
mean?
when
Sorry,
we
go
actually reviewed the Cyclone, that was the
on.
best variant in my book out of all of them. I still think
It
it's
is.
the best one. Um, yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry,
the
SA, I'll let you finish.
well, no, I was just gonna say about the RN is that we don't know yet what type of collection it's gonna do. Is it it may not have a large signature and be able to collect, because it may be going off of signal collection or some other, we don't know what the total capabilities of its role, if it's actively scanning or passively receiving
Yeah.
signal, and energy. And I believe, I can't remember for certain, but I believe that it was considered to be a stealth-like vehicle at the time. Not as much armor, not as
Yep.
much signature. So, its role here though is purely to protection of that forward force, monitoring. Um, the MTs are just for rapid response, right? You have the ability to be able to swing a gun around, swing some rockets around, probably far faster than the tanks, and
Mm.
potentially provide additional suppressive fire, for small arms, somebody popping out with a rocket launcher, whatever it's going to be. um, and the ability to be able to, the APCs and those MTs are the ability to take a position and then put boots inside of that position.
Mm.
Go clear houses, go clear whatever you need to.
So I was gonna say for the lay people in the audience, but really this is just for me. The SRV, is that for physically picking up like broken tanks? Is that what that's
Yeah,
for?
so that is recovery vehicle. Um, Normally, that would be something that would be located with a battalion level effort, and we're not doing that. But my thought process on it was, that the Vulcan can do some repair, but we don't know what levels of repair it can do.
Mm,
So the ability, it may take longer for it to repair, and you don't want to leave a Vulcan out in the front. You want to get the Vulcan out as quickly as things are fueled. So my thought process was that if a tonk is taken down, the Redeemer in that SRV go and pick up that tonk and bring it back to the Vulcan for more long-term repair.
mm,
So give them the ability to get that tonk back out as quickly as possible. Um, but that makes some assumptions. It makes assumption that the Vulcan is going to have the capability of doing that. But we know the Vulcan storage, its ability to rearm. I would think too, it might have an extra set of treads. Even though the tonks should have those, I don't think they do right now. But then eventually they might be added. But the ability to bring extra sets of treads, particular spare parts that you would need, and things that we haven't seen in these vehicles that we hopefully will see, although I kind of doubt it, just because it's something that's so niche that CIG probably won't add it. But those are things like tow bars, the ability for an MT to recover an MT.
mm.
The ability to, we're going to see some type of stretcher, but like, are we going to see a pull down stretcher in the APC? So this is a lot. This is probably a lot more, than I would normally offer. But once the game begins to get fleshed out, I really think,
Mm.
I said this in the last video we did. That's theaters of war.
Yep.
As that gets closer, some of these mechanics are really going to pop.
Yeah, and you'll definitely see a lot more of what they're intending to implement. And I do think there is a lot more ground vehicles to come that we just haven't seen. And I think everything you just said there kind of covers what I was going to say too, but just in a different way. Um,
Mhm.
oh, excuse me.
I would say Badgers beat me very badly with the medical capability. Two
He
types of
did.
medical capability.
he kicked our butt.
Because that was a really good thought process on that.
Yeah, my go-to on that was the Apollo medevac, but because it makes so much sense with the drones. You don't have to risk it at all. You send the drones. If the drone dies, the drone dies. You're not risking, and also it's a lot harder to follow a drone back to source than it is to follow a Pisces. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I actually did have an Apollo in my head, but when I did the list, I forgot to add it. So, yeah.
Well, the medevac, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that level of capability. I think that it's going to have to be very near the drone. So it's not like it can send a drone out like 1 click or 2 clicks. It's going to have to go with it and be within maybe 50 meters. That's my thought process on it.
But if you went in with like 2 redeemers, you could very quickly get someone in and out. That's where I think he's going with that, and that was my intent as well. The other thing I want to talk about real quick, because I did mention the SRV, is I actually think the SRV could be used for a few other things too, like rapid deployment of, say, ballistas to a hilltop, or to put a tank in a place pretty quickly. I really like the idea of that SRV, and like if you escorted it with 2 redeemers, I can see that being quite a leg up that I just didn't think of at the time.
Oh, that's a great idea. I didn't consider it, but that's a great idea.
Yeah,
and potentially even rapidly moving missiles to the tanks on the front line without risking your sole rearm repair vehicle. Just literally pick it up in the tractor or whatever in its container, take it out, and people can maybe, if they add it, reload it on the fly.
Even to the point of, like, say you're out in an Ursa and you need a rapid recovery, you could just pick up the whole Ursa with all the troops in it and just get them back and then load it and get home. Like it, I can even see it pulling the hammerheads back up into atmosphere just so everyone can extract quicker. There's just a few little things there that ran through my head. I never would have put an SRV. And as I run the ship, like I've been doing that with all the ships. Like I went with the Hammerhead and the Carrack and the Polaris, but that is the one that I've just gone, wow, that's changed my perspective on that ship quite a bit. Like just the little things that it adds. And I actually would go to the point where I would add a second one, just because then you got one for each Hammerhead, and it's only you really only need one guy in it, and it can do quite a lot. So yeah, I reckon if it with a really good oiled machine, as in team, I think that they would be lifesavers, literally. Yeah. All right, I think we'll kind of wrap it up there, unless you guys have got anything else you'd like to add, or is that good enough for you guys?
I do actually, but this is more of a thing for just the general community and getting some more feedback. Besides that, comments here, especially for the Tonkers, like for Murky, Shockwave, Kirby, and I'm forgetting somebody, I'm sure, Val. Like, I would love to see others go into Fleet View, build out what they think this would be, take a screenshot of it and drop it, go to the Inforunners Discord, go to the latest episode discussion and drop them there, because I'm very curious, because we have some very experienced people, and I'd love to see their perspective of what it would take to do this. And even if you're not a tanker, just anybody who has a concept of how they think they're going to do this with their orgs. I
don't think two of them have been the same. They've been ones that are similar, but every single person's had a different perspective. And I said, you're trying to keep it as small as possible. That's the restriction, because you can literally just sit there and add everything, right? But it's not about covering all bases. It's trying to get it as small as possible. And I will actually read that, but it is covered by badges. So this is my fleet, and my fleet had wait, I'll just change the camera back so you can see what I'm talking about, right? So this is my fleet. My crew is 74 people, but as I said, I could lower that by removing a few people from the Redeemers. If we move on to essays is 89, right? So I think that's the highest of anyone. And then I think Badges kind of wins because his is kind of 66. And he covers everything. Like I don't know. Do you kind of agree with me with that essay? Like if we had to like mutually agree, I think Badges took this one. But you could disagree with me.
Depending on mission, yeah. I mean, he's covered all the bases. The Polaris and the Carrack, I think, I wasn't expecting that, and having an orbital medical and an ability to lay heavy weapons is pretty impressive. So, I mean, I find it very viable. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, though, yours was as well. I mean, like what we're talking about here is a situation where there's no one right way to do it. You know, like if you're going against hardened positions, my fleet would probably be more effective. But that doesn't mean the Badger's fleet couldn't go down there and easily take it out as well. You know, it's all about planning and timing.
Yeah, I think Badgers was kind of the one that had the medical stuff, and you and I just totally
Yeah.
missed that. And I think that's kind of why I'm leaning towards his, because you do need that. You know, people are going to go down. They need help. And you and I, like yours and I's will get it done, but only half the people are going home. You know, so if you get what I mean. So that's probably a bit of an oversight on our part. Yeah, please in the comments below, feel free to give us a fleet viewer image and a link to it. We'll have a look if we can, but it is a lot easier if you go on the Discord and chuck it in latest episode discussion, or that's probably the best place to put it, because then we can just go through and look at them and we don't have to do every individual link. Yeah, but I am really interested to see what other people come up with, because there is, as we've said, no right and wrong. It's just trying to see if we can hone that and get it really, find, again, it helps you find little ships like that SRV that I mentioned that you just didn't think of. Like, and I again, there was a couple like the Dragonfly that Badgers brought up that we just didn't think of. So maybe you guys will have some that we haven't thought of, and that's why we want to see them, because we want that information, and it's all about sharing the information. All right. Like if you like this type of video, dislike it if you dislike the video. Join us on Discord. If you want to go the full 9 yards, back us on Patreon, all that type of stuff. That's everything. Is there anything you want to add, Badgers, SA, before we head off? I think that's everything. Cool.
Just for myself, that if you come and join us on Discord, there's actually a whole bunch of channels in Discord. You can come and ask a professional. You've got military experience, cargo, mining, repairs, scanning, medical, the whole gamut. Just type in a question, and one of us will get back to you with as close to a real-world answer as we can find for you.
Yeah, and it's good. It's good because it actually sometimes gets some of the professionals thinking about stuff that they wouldn't normally think of. And it's really quite surprising how, because there's this real back and forth going, and I really am enjoying it, and I'm getting a lot out of it, and I know these boys are all getting a lot out of it as well, and the people that ask the questions. So yeah, all right, thanks for that. He's been Badgers, he's been SA, I've been Execute, and we'll catch you in the next one. Say bye, guys.
Yes.